My husband's voice still echoed in the rafters of my mind. Never step foot in the red barn, Clara. Not for any reason. Promise me. It was the only command he ever gave me in 27 years of marriage. No explanations, no stories. Just that one strange, absolute rule. And because I loved him, I obeyed. Though every time I passed the sagging silhouette of that old structure, curiosity gnawed at me like a rat in the walls. Now he was gone, lowered into the ground under a grey Minnesota sky, and I was left in the hushed stillness of the farmhouse. Grief had a way of blunting the edges of daily life. The rooms felt cavernous. Clocks seemed louder. Even the kettle on the stove sounded like it was crying. I drifted through those first weeks in a fog, arranging flowers that wilted too quickly, returning casseroles in their borrowed dishes, nodding politely when neighbours whispered, "Such a shock." He was too young. But my world tilted further 2 weeks later in the panelled office of our attorney, Mr. Phelps. His desk was crowded with paper towers and brass lamps that gave off the faint smell of warmed dust. He worked through the will in a dry monotone until he paused, removed his glasses, and looked at me with something unreadable in his eyes. "There's one more item, Mrs. Hale." He slid a long envelope across the desk. Thick, cream-coloured, sealed with the kind of red wax you only see in old movies. My name in my husband's hand. That sharp, precise script I knew as well as my own. Alongside it, a small iron key rested on a maple leaf keychain. I touched it with 2 fingers, as though it might burn me. "What is this?" "Your husband left instructions," Phelps said. The barn, what he called the Red Barn, was not to be mentioned until after his passing. He filed separate documents concerning it. The deed, taxes, upkeep, all transferred solely to your name. He made it clear you were to be told only now. The air in the office thinned. "The barn? Why? Why would he hide it?" "I can't speculate, Mrs. Hale." But he was explicit. "When I am gone, Clara will know what to do." His words. I held the envelope in both hands. My pulse thudded in my ears. For years I had accepted that the barn was off limits, no questions asked. Now, with my husband cold in the earth, the mystery had risen with him. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the sealed letter under the dim bulb. Rain tapped steadily at the windows, a lullaby for the restless. With trembling fingers, I broke the wax and unfolded the thick pages. "My dearest Clara, if you're reading this, I am gone. I never explained the Red Barn, though I know you wondered. I kept it from you not because I didn't trust you, but because I feared what was inside could drag you into danger you never asked for. I swore to protect you, even if it meant silence. But now the choice is yours. The barn and what lies within it belong to you. Do not open it, unless you're prepared to face truths that cannot be unseen. If you do go inside, trust Ellis, no one else. I love you, always. James." The letter shook in my hands. Danger. Truths that couldn't be unseen. My husband had built a fortress around a secret, and now he was gone. The key warm against my palm. Sleep was impossible. By dawn, I found myself walking the gravel path toward the Red Barn. Mist clung low over the fields, wrapping the structure in a veil. Up close, it loomed larger than memory, its peeling paint more scarlet rust than red, its doors chained shut with a heavy padlock. The boards creaked as if exhaling after years of holding in secrets. The key turned smoothly in the lock. The chain fell away with a clatter that seemed to echo across the empty fields. My breath caught, my heart a frantic drum. I pressed my hands against the door, pushed, and it groaned open. The first breath of air that rolled out was cool, metallic, and old. Sunlight cut through broken slats, falling across a cavernous space that did not look like any barn I'd ever known. Not hay, not tools, not tractors. Instead, Rows of tall wooden crates, their surfaces stamped with numbers and dates. Along the far wall, portraits, dozens of them, hung in mismatched frames, their eyes staring blankly into the dust. And in the far corner, a trapdoor, heavy, padlocked. The same iron key hung like an anchor in my pocket. I took one hesitant step inside. The floorboards creaked. My throat tightened with a pressure I couldn't name. That's when I heard it. A slow crunch of gravel outside. Footsteps. Someone else was here. The sound froze me where I stood. Gravel crunching under steady weight, measured, deliberate. Whoever it was hadn't come running or stumbling. They walked as though they belonged. I shut the barn door just enough to peer through a narrow crack. A tall figure emerged from the mist. Broad-shouldered, a cap pulled low, his boots moving with the familiarity of someone who had walked this path countless times. "Clara," he called, his voice calm but firm. Recognition struck. Ellis, the farmhand who had worked for us on and off for 20 years, keeping mostly to himself. James trusted him. I'd never questioned why. The barn groaned faintly as I released the door and stepped into the light. "Ellis?" My voice sounded thin in the cool morning air. He stopped a few feet away, studying me with pale, steady eyes. "So, you finally came." I clutched the iron key in my pocket. "How did you know?" "Because he told me you would. One day." Ellis's gaze flicked past me to the barn door. "And because you've already broken the rule." The words landed like stones. "You knew about this? All these years?" Ellis took off his cap, ran a hand through hair gone more silver than brown. "I knew enough. Enough to keep the place in repair when he couldn't. Enough to keep the curious away. Your husband wasn't a man who shared lightly, Clara, but he trusted me with the barn." I swallowed hard. "Then tell me, what's inside?" He hesitated, jaw tightening. "That's not my story to tell. He left that choice to you." The silence stretched. Around us, the mist lifted slowly, revealing the outlines of fields, the dark edge of the woods. Everything seemed too still, as though the earth itself waited for my decision. "I already stepped inside," I admitted finally. "There are crates, portraits, a trapdoor." Ellis's expression changed. A flicker of unease crossed his weathered features. "You opened a crate?" "No," I said. "But I almost did." He exhaled, long and low. "Good. Don't. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because once you do, there's no turning back. Whatever piece you thought you had left, it'll be gone." His voice was grave, carrying the weight of something lived and regretted. My throat tightened. "Ellis, I just buried my husband. Peace isn't something I recognize right now." For the first time, his gaze softened. "I'm sorry, Clara. For him. For you. He was a good man. Better than most. Then why all this secrecy? Why would he forbid me to step foot in my own barn?" Ellis adjusted his cap again, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. "Because there are people who'd kill for what's in there, and because he wanted you safe." The words chilled me more than the morning air. I turned back to the barn, to the dim interior where the trap door waited like an open mouth. "Tell me who?" I whispered. But Ellis didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, lowered his voice. "Whatever you do, don't let anyone else in. Not the lawyers, not neighbors, not even family. They'll come asking questions. Don't give them answers." Something in his tone, a brittle urgency, made my chest tighten. "Family?" I asked. "You mean his cousins?" Ellis's silence was answer enough. I stepped back inside before I could lose my nerve. Dust swirled in the beams of sunlight slanting through broken planks. The portraits loomed on the wall, some faces stern, others oddly blurred as though painted in haste. Names were carved into the frames: Mitchell, Hale, others I didn't recognize. Whole generations stared down at me. Ellis stayed by the door, but didn't cross the threshold. He made me promise never to enter past this point. My work stopped here. Repairs, paint, keeping the locks secure. The rest? That was his. I moved to the nearest crate, brushing my fingers over the faded stencil. 1987, my birth year. A chill slipped down my spine. I shifted to the next one. 1995. Another date with no context, but it pulled at me all the same. What's in them? I asked again, softer this time. Ellis's silence stretched. Finally, he shook his head. Evidence? Proof. That's all I'll say. And trouble if it ever gets out. My knees felt weak, as though the boards beneath me had turned unsteady. Evidence of what? He didn't answer. Instead, he looked past me, toward the trapdoor in the corner. He told me if you ever came this far, you'd need to see what's below. But be careful. Once you go down there, his eyes found mine, steady and unwavering. You don't come back the same. The trapdoor seemed to pulse with significance, as though it had been waiting all along. The padlock glinted faintly in the angled light, the same iron as the key I still clutched. Ellis, I said, voice barely more than a breath. What did James hide from me? His answer was a whisper. The truth about his family, and the truth about yours. The floor creaked. My heart jumped. For a split second I thought Ellis had moved, but he hadn't. The sound had come from the corner, from the trapdoor. Something below had shifted. The sound beneath the trapdoor was faint, but real. A scrape, a subtle thud, like something shifting weight. My throat tightened. The rational part of me said rats, maybe a raccoon, but the way Ellis's jaw clenched told me he thought otherwise. Did you hear? I heard. He cut in, voice clipped. He moved fast for a man in his 60s, striding past me to the trapdoor, crouching low. He pressed his palm against the wood, as if feeling for vibrations. His face paled. It's too soon, he muttered. Too damn soon. My heart thudded. Too soon for what? Before he could answer, the crunch of tires on gravel snapped our heads toward the doorway. Another vehicle. Not the steady hum of a neighbor's truck, but something heavier, newer. I darted to the crack in the barn door and peered out. A black SUV idled at the end of the lane, its engine low and menacing in the morning quiet. The windows were tinted dark, too dark, but the outline of 3 figures shifted inside, watching, waiting. Ellis swore under his breath. They've been circling for weeks. Your husband said the day you opened that barn, they'd show up. Ice washed through me. Who are they? Mitchell Blood, Ellis said. James's kin, but not the kind who send flowers after a funeral. I turned, desperate for answers. Then what do they want? He fixed me with eyes that seemed older than the man himself. Whatever's under that trapdoor. The thud came again from below, louder, closer this time. My pulse spiked, and for a moment I could swear it was deliberate, as though something or someone wanted to be heard. Ellis gripped my arm. Listen to me, Clara. We need to leave, right now. This barn isn't safe. Not with them out there. But my eyes were locked on the padlocked trapdoor. The key in my pocket weighed like an anchor, hot against my thigh. James wanted me to see what's inside. He said the choice was mine. I'm not leaving until I know what's down there. Ellis's face darkened. You think you want answers, but truth has teeth, Clara. Once it bites, you bleed forever. The barn door rattled, suddenly, jerking my gaze. Someone had stepped out of the SUV and was testing the handle, bold as anything. My breath caught. A male voice, muffled but commanding, carried inside. Mrs. Hale, we know you're in there. Let's talk. I stumbled back, pulse slamming. Ellis pulled a rusted tool from his belt, a crowbar polished by years of use, and gestured toward the rear exit. Quietly. We slip out the back, circle to the house. Don't answer them. The voice grew sharper, each knock against the barn door echoing through my ribs. Open up, Clara. You don't know what you're guarding. I looked at Ellis. They know my name. They know more than that. His grip tightened on the crowbar. And if they get in here before you're ready, it's over. The padlocked trapdoor seemed to pulse again in the corner of my vision. The scrape, the thud, the silence that followed. Questions screamed through me. What could James possibly have hidden here? Why did he spend his last years building secrets instead of sharing them with me? And why did his family, strangers, really, care so much? The barn door groaned. The hinges strained. One of the men outside had started prying. Ellis swore again and moved fast. He shoved one of the crates sideways with surprising strength, revealing a narrow passage behind it. An old service hatch cut into the wall. The opening yawned black and close. Through here. Now. I hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity, but the splintering sound of wood decided for me. We slipped through the opening, the rough boards scraping my arms, and dropped onto the damp earth behind the barn. The SUV loomed at the edge of the lane, its doors still open. A man in a dark jacket rounded the corner, eyes scanning. We crouched low, hidden in the wild weeds. "Back to the house," Ellis whispered. "Don't look back." But as we crept away, I couldn't stop myself. I turned once more toward the barn. Through the gap in the broken doors, I saw it. The trapdoor had shifted, just slightly. The lock hung loose, as if it had been opened from the inside. My breath caught sharp in my chest. James's words from the letter seared through me. "Do not open it unless you're prepared to face truths that cannot be unseen." Something inside that barn wanted out. And his family. They wanted it too. We slipped back into the farmhouse through the mudroom door, Ellis double-bolting it behind us. The silence inside was deafening, punctuated only by my own ragged breath. My palms stung. I hadn't realized I'd been clenching my fists so tightly. Ellis moved with the ease of a man who had rehearsed this moment 100 times. He went to the windows, peered through the blinds. "SUVs still out there," he muttered. "They'll circle. Might try the house next." I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, my body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. The key to the trap door felt like a live coal in my pocket. Something moved down there. I didn't imagine it. "Ellis," my voice cracked. "Tell me what's under that barn. No riddles, no warnings. The truth." He faced me, lines etched deep in his weathered face. "I only know pieces. Enough to keep me awake some nights. Your husband was working on something, evidence, records that could ruin his family if they ever surfaced. He said the red barn wasn't just for storage. It was a vault, a confession written in ledgers, sealed in boxes." "Evidence of what?" Ellis's jaw tightened. "Fraud, theft, things worse than that. He told me once, 'If I die, the past will come knocking. Don't open unless Clara's ready to fight.'" The kitchen felt suddenly smaller, walls pressing in. "And the noises we heard?" His silence said enough. Finally, he rasped. "Could be the old foundation settling. Could be something else. Either way, we're not opening it with those men outside." I pressed my hands against the cool wood of the table. "James, what did you drag me into?" The slam of a car door jolted me. I darted to the window. One of the men from the SUV strode toward the porch, a leather briefcase in hand. He walked like someone confident the door would open. A sharp knock rattled the glass. "Mrs. Hale?" a smooth voice called. "I think we've started off wrong. We're not enemies. We're family." Ellis cursed under his breath. "Don't answer." But the voice was steady, insistent. "James was my cousin. Our cousin. He kept you in the dark, Clara. You deserve better than that. Let us in, and we'll explain." I pressed a hand over my mouth, pulse racing. Family. James had never spoken of cousins, never mentioned anyone who might come laying claim. Ellis leaned close, whispering harsh. "They're Mitchells. 3 brothers. Robert, Alan, and David. Wolves dressed like men. Your husband spent years keeping them off this land." The man outside knocked again, louder, We're not here to hurt you. We only want to talk. You'll want to hear what we know about the Red Barn." My throat tightened. Against every instinct, I found myself edging toward the front hall, letter from James still folded in my pocket. His warning had been clear. Trust Ellis, no one else. But my grief, my gnawing need for answers, pulled me closer. Through the glass, the man's face came into focus. Mid-50s, silver hair cut sharp, a jawline too much like my husband's to deny the relation. His eyes were cold, though, glinting not with kinship, but calculation. "James stole from us," he said, voice carrying easily through the wood. "From you, too. You think you know the man you married, but you don't. He built that barn on lies. Let us in, Clara. We'll prove it." Ellis gripped my shoulder, pulling me back. "Don't. It's bait." But the words cut deep. James, my James, who read to me from tattered paperbacks at night, who remembered the exact colour of the dress I wore on our first date, who held my hand steady through miscarriages and quiet disappointments. A thief? A liar? The cousin's voice softened. "He didn't tell you because he didn't trust you. But you deserve the truth. We can give it to you." I shook my head hard, stepping back from the door. "No." The man's expression shifted in an instant, the veneer of warmth peeling away to reveal something sharp and hungry beneath. He slammed his palm against the glass. "You don't know what you're protecting, Clara. That barn doesn't belong to you. It never did." Ellis tugged me toward the kitchen. Upstairs, away from the windows. We retreated to the study on the second floor, where James had kept his books and papers. The room smelled faintly of cedar and tobacco, a scent that made my throat ache with longing. I dropped into his chair, letting my fingers drift across the desk surface. That's when I noticed it. A false panel near the back corner. My pulse quickened. With a hesitant push, the wood clicked, revealing a shallow compartment. Inside lay a black leather ledger, its spine cracked with age. I pulled it out, heart hammering. The first page bore James's handwriting. Meticulous, angled, unmistakable. The Red Barn Agreement, 1985. Beneath it, names I didn't recognize. Financial figures, signatures, notes scrawled in the margins. Embezzlement, false deeds, burial site. My breath caught. Burial site. Ellis leaned over my shoulder, eyes narrowing. "He left you the map." The house shuddered with another pounding knock, this time from the back door. More than one voice now, shouting my name. I clutched the ledger tight. My husband's secret world had just opened a crack wider, and the people pounding on my doors weren't going to let me close it again. The pounding rattled the back door so hard, I thought the hinges might split. Ellis cursed under his breath, moved to the window, and drew the blinds with a snap. 3 of them, just like I said. I didn't need him to explain. Even from upstairs, I could hear their voices now. Low, confident, overlapping in that practiced way men do when they've rehearsed their roles. "Clara," one called, voice smooth, rehearsed. "We only want a conversation. Let us in and we'll explain everything James kept from you." Another, sharper. "You don't want to be on the wrong side of this. The barn isn't yours. Never was." The third said nothing, but I caught the crunch of his boots pacing across the gravel, a restless energy circling us. Ellis's lips pressed into a hard line. "Robert's the talker. Alan's the lawyer. David, just a shadow, but don't underestimate him." My hands shook as I clutched the ledger to my chest, the words inside still seared behind my eyes. The Red Barn Agreement. "Burial site?" I whispered. "They'll break in." "Not yet," Ellis said. "First they'll try charm, then papers. Only when they're cornered will they show their teeth." As if on cue, a knock came softer this time. The silver-haired one, Robert, I guessed, stepped into view on the porch below. He looked up toward the study window, his gaze finding me with unnerving precision. "There you are," he said, his voice carrying like silk through the morning air. Cousin's widow, you deserve better than scraps of secrets. James lied to you, Clara, lied to everyone. Let us in, and we'll show you proof. Proof. The word needled me. What proof? What could he have that James hadn't already confessed by omission? Ellis leaned closer to me, voice low. Don't answer. Not one word. But Robert wasn't deterred. He motioned, and the second man, Alan, the lawyer, stepped forward, holding a leather portfolio. We've filed with the county, Alan called. There's a petition contesting James's transfer of the barn. Fraudulent, on multiple grounds. If you resist, we'll take this to court. You won't last a month against us. My gut twisted. Papers. Courts. The weight of the law could crush even the strongest conviction, and they knew it. Then David's voice slipped through, quiet, steady, almost kind. We're not here to hurt you, Clara, but you can't protect what doesn't belong to you. Not alone. That last word struck harder than the rest. Alone. They wanted me to feel it, the emptiness James had left behind. I forced myself to stand, spine rigid despite the tremor in my knees. I pushed the window open just enough to speak. This is my property, I said, voice steadier than I felt. James left it to me. You have no claim. Robert's smile sharpened. That's what you think? But your husband was not of sound mind when he changed the deed. We'll prove it. The lawyer lifted the portfolio, shaking it lightly for emphasis. Affidavits. Witness statements. Financial records. He was ill, Clara. Confused. This will not end in your favor. My pulse pounded. James, what did you hide from me? And why are they so desperate to take it back? Ellis stepped beside me, his presence like a wall. You've had your say, he called down. Now leave. Robert's eyes cut to him, narrowing. Still here, Ellis? Guard dog to the end, I see. Tell me, do you think James trusted you more than his own blood? Or were you just another pawn in his game? Ellis didn't flinch. I'd rather be his pawn than your brother. The men exchanged glances, their patience thinning. Alan adjusted his tie, pulling a paper free from the portfolio and holding it up. Court order for inspection. We'll be back with law enforcement if we need to. That barn will be opened, one way or another. My chest tightened. They would bring police, judges, lawyers. They would strip the boards from the walls if I didn't comply. Robert's voice softened again, laced with venom disguised as kindness. Think carefully, Clara. You're a widow now, vulnerable. This fight will drain you, money, energy, reputation. Sign our agreement instead. Walk away with dignity, with compensation. Compensation. They spoke as if grief had a price tag. Ellis's hand brushed my elbow, steadying me. He whispered, "Don't let them smell fear." I lifted my chin. This is my home. James's wishes are clear. You'll get nothing from me. For the first time, Robert's smile cracked, revealing the steel beneath. We'll see about that. He turned sharply, signaling to his brothers. The SUV doors slammed. Gravel spit as they reversed down the drive, disappearing into the mist. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Ellis exhaled, shoulders sagging. That was just the first wave. They'll be back, with uniforms, with papers, with more than words. I looked down at the ledger in my hands, the ink smudging faintly beneath my damp fingers. The words on the page seemed to glow. Embezzlement, false deeds, burial site. What is this, Ellis? My voice cracked. What did James write? His eyes flicked to the book, then away, like the weight of the truth was too heavy to hold. It's a map, he said finally, to everything he was trying to keep from them. And maybe from you. My breath caught. Burial site. Does that mean? He didn't answer. But I already knew. James hadn't just left me land. He'd left me a battlefield. And beneath the floorboards of that red barn, something was buried that his family would kill to unearth. The ledger lay heavy in my lap, as night pressed its weight against the farmhouse windows. Every creak of the old beams, every brush of tree branch against glass carried the echo of threat. Ellis sat across from me at the kitchen table, arms folded, his eyes fixed not on me, but on the key resting beside the ledger. "You're thinking about it," he said. "I can't stop." My voice trembled with fatigue. "The trapdoor, the noises, the dates in that ledger. I need to know what James was hiding." Ellis shook his head. "Wanting to know is one thing. Surviving the knowledge is another." I pressed a hand to my chest. "Surviving? Ellis, I already buried my husband. I've survived that. How much worse could it be?" His expression darkened. "Worse enough that James begged me to keep you away from it. That should have been enough to deter me, but grief had sharpened into something harder. Anger, maybe, or defiance. James had left me keys, letters, and riddles. If he truly wanted me blind, he could have destroyed them all. Instead, he'd made sure they reached me. He wanted me to choose. By midnight, the decision was no longer a question. I found myself in the barn again, lantern in one hand, the iron key in the other. Dust swirled in the beam of light. The crates stood like silent guards, their stamped years watching me pass. The portraits on the wall seemed more alive in the lamplight, eyes following me to the far corner where the trapdoor waited. I crouched, fingers brushing the cool padlock. The metal bore tiny scratches, as if it had been tampered with or opened before. My breath shook as I slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, too smoothly, the mechanism oiled and ready. The padlock snapped open with a sound that seemed to echo down into the earth. I hesitated, lantern trembling in my grip. James's voice from the letter pressed against my skull. "Do not open it unless you're prepared to face truths that cannot be unseen." I lifted the heavy door. A rush of cold air swept out, stale and metallic, raising gooseflesh across my arms. The lantern's glow fell into a narrow staircase of concrete steps, descending into shadow. For a long moment, I stood frozen. Then a sound drifted up, soft, rhythmic, like the hum of machinery buried deep underground. I descended slowly, each step groaning under my weight. The lantern light brushed across walls lined with raw concrete, damp with age. The air grew colder, thicker. At the bottom stretched a chamber that didn't belong to a farm at all. No hay, no tools. Instead, filing cabinets lining the walls, stacks of ledgers on steel shelves. And in the center, a battered desk holding an old laptop. My pulse thundered in my ears. I set the lantern down, hands trembling as I brushed dust from the computer. A sticky note clung to the lid, ink faded, but legible. "Date we met, plus your maiden name." I whispered the answer aloud, fingers hovering. My wedding date. My name before James. A password only I could know. The screen flickered, humming to life. And then his face appeared. James. Not pale and fading as I'd last seen him, but vibrant, healthy, recorded years earlier. He looked straight into the camera, his crooked smile slicing me open. "Clara, if you're watching this, then I'm gone. And you've opened the barn despite everything I begged. I suppose I should have known." I pressed a hand to my mouth. Tears stung my eyes. "I didn't keep this from you out of spite. I did it to protect you. This barn isn't just history, it's evidence. Our family's evidence. My cousins, my uncles. They buried more than money and lies in here. They buried lives. If this ever came to light, everything they've built collapses. That's why they'll come for you now. Because you hold the key." He leaned forward, eyes shadowed with regret. I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I thought I had more time, but here we are. If you're brave enough, in the bottom drawer of that desk, you'll find the first file. Start there. But be ready. Once you see it, you can't go back to not knowing. The video ended, freezing on his face. His eyes locked on mine across time. My legs shook as I crouched before the desk, tugging open the drawer. Inside lay a single blue folder. Its label, written in James's hand, was stark and cold. Mitchell family. Death ledger. My breath hitched. Burial site? A sudden knock boomed above me, reverberating. Through the ceiling. Heavy boots on barn floorboards. Voices, muffled, but urgent. The brothers were back, and I was trapped below with the one secret James had spent his life, and maybe his soul, trying to keep buried. The ceiling shook with footsteps. Dust sifted down in a fine haze, coating the open folder on the desk. My lungs clenched. They were inside the barn. "Check the crates," one voice ordered. Sharp, commanding. "Robert." I snapped the folder shut, pressing it tight to my chest. My lantern hissed faintly, its flame guttering with every draught of air slipping through the cracks. I wanted to blow it out, sink into darkness. But the thought of being blind in this place, this vault of James's secrets, froze me still. Ellis had been right. They weren't just circling anymore. They were hunting. Boots scraped directly overhead, right above the trapdoor. "Locked," another voice grunted. "Alan. But fresh scratches. She's been down here." My blood ran cold. For a moment, silence. Then Robert again, closer now. "Get it open." The metallic squeal of a crowbar against the padlock jolted me into motion. I stuffed the folder into my coat, eyes darting across the chamber for any exit, any alcove. And then I saw it. A narrow side hall, almost hidden behind a row of filing cabinets. Concrete stairs climbed sharply, disappearing into shadow. I snatched up the lantern and hurried down the corridor, the air growing damper, colder. My footsteps echoed like gunshots. The hallway ended in another chamber, smaller, more intimate. This one wasn't lined with cabinets or ledgers. Instead, maps plastered the walls, oil fields, survey charts, land deeds, some marked with red X's, others circled in heavy ink, and tacked above them, photographs, grainy, black and white, some faded, some recent. Men shaking hands, men signing contracts, men standing in front of fresh dug earth. My stomach lurched. These weren't just business deals. They were grave sites. The lantern's light skimmed over another desk in the center of the room. A different one. Polished, deliberate, almost ceremonial. And on it, a row of small cassette tapes, each labeled in James's neat hand. Robert, 1989. Alan, 1992. David, 1996. My fingers trembled as I reached for the nearest. Evidence. James hadn't just kept records. He'd recorded their voices, their confessions. A sudden bang echoed down the corridor, the trapdoor giving way. I froze, heart hammering. The brothers were coming. I grabbed the tapes, stuffing them into my coat alongside the folder. My body felt heavier with each piece of evidence I carried, like the truth itself was a physical burden. The sound of boots on concrete echoed closer. Shadows stretched down the hallway. Panicked, I scanned the room. That's when I saw it. Another door, half hidden behind a canvas tarp. I shoved it open, praying it wasn't a dead end. It wasn't. I stumbled into what could only be called a war room. Bunker dug deep into the earth, lined with shelves of supplies, water jugs, canned food, medical kits. Against the far wall, 2 battered rifles leaned in the corner. James hadn't built a barn. He'd built a fortress. On a steel table lay another envelope, my name written in that same familiar hand. For Clara, when they find you. My throat closed. Voices echoed closer, bouncing off concrete. Robert's sharp bark, Alan's colder rasp. "She's down here, I can smell her." I fumbled with the envelope, ripping it open with shaking fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper. James's words, stark and final. "Clara, if you are reading this, they've breached the barn. You cannot give them what you find. Not the ledgers, not the tapes. They will bury you alongside the others. Trust Ellis. Trust no one else. Run if you must. Fight if you can. But whatever happens, don't let them erase the truth. I pressed the note to my chest, tears burning. My husband had known this day would come. He had prepared for it. For me. The echo of boots grew louder, closer, spilling into the chamber behind me. Robert's voice, cold and triumphant. "Clara!" The lantern flickered. My pulse thundered. They had found me. "Clara!" Robert's voice slithered down the corridor, steady, assured. Boots scraped against concrete, echoing like a countdown. I pressed flat against the bunker wall, the envelope still in my trembling hands. My husband's warning burned in my chest. Trust Ellis. Trust no one else. The beam of a flashlight cut through the narrow hall, sweeping across the maps and filing cabinets before landing square on me. "There she is," Alan said, his tone clipped, professional, as though this were just another courtroom victory. Robert stepped into the chamber first, tall and broad, the resemblance to James enough to make my stomach twist. His smile was sharp, a predator's. Behind him came Alan with his briefcase, and then David, silent as a shadow, his eyes colder than both. "You shouldn't have come down here alone," Robert said softly. But then again, James always said curiosity would be your undoing. Anger cut through my fear. "You don't get to speak about my husband." Robert's smirk deepened. "Oh, Clara, you really think you knew him?" James was clever, I'll give him that. But not clever enough to keep the truth buried forever. "You've opened the barn. That means you're in our game now." Alan tapped his briefcase, a lawyer's flourish. "You're in possession of stolen property. Those ledgers, those tapes. They're ours by right. Hand them over, and maybe we resolve this without dragging your name through the mud." My grip on the folder tightened under my coat. "They're not yours. James left them to me." "James left you lies," Robert snapped, the smile gone now, replaced by steel. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "He built this bunker because he was paranoid, obsessed. But the real crime, the one he never confessed to, was stealing from his own blood. Us." Something shifted in the shadows near the stairwell, and my heart stopped. "Hannah?" My daughter stepped into the weak light, her face pale, eyes wide, my blood iced over. "Mom." Her voice was small, hesitant. They told me you were hiding the truth from me. That Dad," she faltered, glancing at Robert, who laid a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "That Dad wasn't who we thought he was." My chest caved. "Hannah, no." I took a step forward. "Don't listen to them. They're lying to you, using you. James left this for us, to protect us." Robert squeezed her shoulder, his voice dripping with practiced warmth. "Your mother's frightened. She thinks she's protecting your father's memory, but she's only digging both of you deeper. Don't you want answers, Hannah? Don't you deserve to know why your father built this prison of secrets?" Hannah's eyes brimmed with confusion, torn between me and them. My heart ached. She was too young, too raw with grief to stand against their poison. "Listen to me," I begged, voice cracking. "Your father wasn't perfect, but he was trying to shield us from them. That's why he left me the key. That's why he trusted Ellis. He didn't trust them." Alan stepped forward, voice cold. "Enough. This isn't about sentiment. This is about control. Clara, hand over the evidence, or you lose more than just this farm. You'll lose her too." The threat slammed into me like a fist. My daughter's life, her loyalty, her future. They meant to steal all of it. I glanced at Hannah, my voice trembling but fierce. "Sweetheart, look at me. Who stood by your side when your father died? Who held you through the nights when you couldn't stop crying? Them or me?" Her lip quivered. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. David finally spoke, his voice a low growl. "Enough talk. Take the files from her." He stepped forward, and instinct surged through me. My hand shot to the lantern, flinging it to the floor. Glass shattered, flame roaring to life as oil spilled across the concrete. The chamber erupted in light and smoke. Shouts echoed off the walls, Robert cursing, Alan stumbling back, David snarling as the fire leapt toward the maps pinned on the wall. I lunged for Hannah, grabbing her wrist. "Run!" For one breathless moment, she didn't resist. Then she yanked free, eyes wide, torn between me and the men who claimed her father's blood. "Mom!" But the fire roared louder, drowning her words, filling the bunker with choking smoke. I bolted into the narrow side hall, clutching James's folder tight against me, my daughter's voice chasing me like a ghost. Behind me, the brothers shouted, the fire crackling higher, devouring the secrets James had left me. By the time Ellis dragged me out of the barn's rear hatch, my lungs burned raw from smoke. We stumbled into the cold night air, coughing, eyes streaming, clutching what scraps of James's secrets I'd saved. Behind us, flames licked at the barn's foundation, sending black plumes into the sky. Ellis hauled me to the farmhouse porch, his arm steady around my shoulders. "You all right?" I nodded weakly, though my chest rattled. "The tapes, the maps, most of it's gone." "Not all." He pointed to the folder I still clutched. "As long as you've got that, they'll never stop." The truth of it settled in my bones. The brothers hadn't just wanted the barn. They wanted everything erased. Sirens split the night before I could gather myself. Red and blue lights cut across the gravel lane, bouncing off the smoke-streaked windows. A squad car, then another. Behind them, a black sedan I recognized even before Alan stepped out, briefcase in hand, tie still immaculate despite the chaos. The sheriff, broad and weary, strode toward me. "Mrs. Hale? We got reports of a fire and a disturbance." His gaze flicked to the barn, then to the brothers standing in the driveway, their faces masks of concern. Robert stepped forward smoothly, a hand raised in greeting. "Sheriff, thank God you're here. We came to check on our cousin's widow, only to find the barn ablaze. We're worried for her safety." Lies, spoken with such ease, I nearly doubted myself. "Lies," Ellis barked. "They broke in, Sheriff. Tried to force the trapdoor. Clara had to defend herself." The sheriff's eyes narrowed, but Alan was already producing papers from his case. "Court order," he said crisply. "Signed this afternoon. Grants us inspection rights to the structure known as the Red Barn. We're here legally. Whatever. Accident happened down there. That's on Mrs. Hale." My stomach lurched. They'd anticipated this. Filed papers before even stepping foot on my land. The sheriff took the documents, flipping through them slowly, his expression unreadable. My hands trembled as I clutched the folder tighter. Inside was proof of their crimes. But in the eyes of the law, what did I have? Just a widow with ash on her clothes and smoke in her lungs. Robert's gaze slid to me, cold and triumphant. "You're out of your depth, Clara. Hand over what you took, and maybe we can keep this civil." Before I could speak, a voice broke the tension. "Stop, Hannah." She stood in the doorway of the farmhouse, her hair tangled, eyes rimmed red from smoke and tears. She looked at me, then at them, her voice shaking but clear. "I saw you. You tried to take it from her. You threatened her." My breath caught. Alan's face remained smooth, but Robert's jaw flexed. "Hannah, sweetheart, you're upset. Your mother's confused you. Come with us, and we'll explain everything." Her lip trembled. She looked at me again, doubt swimming in her eyes. The silence stretched until I thought my heart might burst. Finally, she shook her head. "No, I'm staying with my mum." The relief was so sharp, it hurt. Robert's mask cracked then, just for a second, before he forced a smile back into place. He turned to the sheriff, voice calm once more. "We'll pursue this properly, through the courts." Alan tucked the papers back into his case. David's stare lingered on me, flat and unblinking, a promise carved in silence. Then they retreated to their SUV, the engine growling low as it carried them into the night. The sheriff gave me a long look. "Mrs. Hale, whatever's happening here, it's bigger than me. They'll be back, with judges and deputies behind them. Best get yourself a lawyer." When they were gone, Ellis exhaled heavily, sinking into a porch chair. "You won this round, barely, but it's only the beginning." I sat beside him, Hannah hovering close. My daughter's hand brushed mine, tentative, uncertain, but present. I opened the folder in my lap. The first page glared up at me, James's handwriting stark. Mitchell family. Death ledger. The names listed there chilled me, dates, amounts, and beside them a single word written again and again. Burial. My husband hadn't just recorded financial crimes. He'd tracked something darker. And now the courts, the brothers, and maybe even the law itself would come for me before I could prove it. I closed the folder, met Ellis's tired eyes, and whispered, "Then we fight." The house was quiet, but not peaceful. Smoke still clung to the walls, the faint scent of ash seeping from our clothes and hair. Hannah sat curled on the sofa, arms wrapped tight around her knees, her face half in shadow. I set a steaming mug of tea on the table, though I doubted she'd touch it. She hadn't spoken more than a handful of words since the barn fire. Every time her eyes met mine, I saw the question burning there. What if they were right? I lowered myself into the armchair across from her, James's folder balanced on my lap. "Your father left something for you," I said softly. Her eyes flicked up, wary. "For me?" I nodded, reaching into the folder and pulling free a slim, sealed envelope. James's handwriting scrawled across the front. "For Hannah, when she doubts me." Her breath caught. She took it with shaking hands, staring at her name as though the letters themselves might burn. For a long moment she didn't move, didn't blink. Finally, she tore it open. "My dearest Hannah." The letter began, James's familiar script, steady and deliberate. "If you're reading this, then I've failed in the only way I feared most. I didn't live long enough to tell you the truth myself. You will hear things about me, from men who share my blood, but not my soul. They will call me a thief, a liar, a traitor. And you, in your grief, might believe them. But know this, I never betrayed you or your mother. Every lie I told, every secret I kept, was to protect you both from them." Hannah's lips moved. As she read silently, tears beginning to gather. "The barn is not a curse, Hannah. It is a shield. Inside it are the records of everything they've done. Every dollar stolen, every deal forged in blood. If it ever reaches daylight, the Mitchells will fall. That's why they'll twist words and wield laws to take it from you. But the truth is yours now. Guard it or destroy it. Either way, know that I trusted you above all else." The final line made her voice break as she read it aloud. "I love you, even when you doubt me, even when you curse my name. My love is the only truth that can't be erased." The letter slipped from her fingers, falling to her lap. She pressed both hands to her mouth, shoulders shaking. I crossed the space between us, kneeling beside her. "He knew you'd question him. He knew grief would make you vulnerable. But Hannah, he trusted you, just as he trusted me." She turned toward me, eyes brimming. "I don't know what to believe, Mum. They sounded so sure, so convincing. And then the fire, the shouting. I just—" Her voice cracked into sobs. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight against my chest. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just remember who loved you, who stayed. That's what matters." We sat there, clinging to each other, until the sobs softened into silence. Ellis cleared his throat gently from the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this." He carried a folded newspaper, fresh from town. The front page bore the headline in bold letters: Mitchell family seeks control of Red Barn estate. Claim fraud in will. The article beneath painted me as unstable, overwhelmed, a grieving widow lashing out at her husband's kin. The brothers had filed their petition publicly, framing themselves as saviors of a legacy I was unfit to manage. Hannah stiffened in my arms, her tears replaced by shock. They're trying to make you look crazy. That's how they play, Ellis said grimly. By the time the hearing comes, they'll have half the county convinced you set the barn on fire yourself. I lifted James's folder, the weight of it pressing into my palms. Then we need more than his words. We need proof that can't be twisted. Ellis's gaze met mine, steady. The tapes you saved, the death ledger. It might be enough. But once you use it, there's no hiding. You'll be declaring war. I felt Hannah's hand slip into mine, her grip trembling but firm. For the first time since James's death, her eyes held no doubt, only resolve. Then we fight, she whispered. The words echoed James's own, and in that moment I knew. The Mitchells hadn't broken her. They'd only forged her harder. But the courts wouldn't be swayed by sentiment. They'd want evidence. And evidence meant opening the rest of James's secrets, no matter how dark. I rose, clutching the ledger to my chest. Tomorrow, we take this to a lawyer. If the Mitchells want war, we'll give them one. Outside, the night was still. But in the silence, I swore I heard the barn groan, as though the earth itself knew the storm that was coming. The barn smelled of charred wood and smoke when Ellis and I returned at dawn. Black streaks climbed the beams like veins, but the fire hadn't spread far. By some miracle, most of the structure still stood. The trapdoor, scorched but intact, gaped open in the corner. Ellis muttered, "Like it refused to burn." I tightened my grip on the lantern. Hannah trailed behind me, nervous but determined. If Dad left anything else, we need it now, before court. The stairs creaked under our weight as we descended into the bunker. Ash still clung to the air, making us cough. The central chamber lay in ruin. Maps singed, boxes toppled, papers half charred on the floor. The fire had chewed away half the evidence before I ever touched it. But the desk in the war room still stood, blackened but solid. On its surface, beneath a film of soot, lay a small brass key, different from the iron one that opened the trapdoor. I frowned, picking it up. What does this unlock? Ellis scanned the room, then motioned toward the far wall. A heavy steel cabinet leaned there, its door padlocked. Fire hadn't touched it. Looks like your answer. The brass key slid in with a satisfying click. The door groaned open, revealing shelves lined with thick binders, each labelled in James's handwriting. Bank ledgers, land deeds, medical records. A paper trail long enough to bury the Mitchells alive. But that wasn't all. At the bottom sat a smaller lockbox. Inside, wrapped in oilskin, were Polaroid photographs. Grainy, washed in the flash of a cheap camera. The first showed a man in a suit, face grim, standing beside a shallow trench. The second showed something worse. A mound of dirt, freshly disturbed, with a shovel still stuck in the ground. My breath caught. On the back, James's scrawl read, Robert, July 1989. The next photo. Alan, leaning against a truck, smoke curling from his lips, while two men lowered a tarp-wrapped shape into the earth. Alan, March 1992. My hand shook as I lifted the final photo. David this time. His face in partial profile, eyes caught mid-blink, standing over another grave. David, September 1996. I dropped the stack onto the desk, bile rising in my throat. Dear God. Ellis's jaw tightened. He kept everything. Every sin they buried. They killed people. Hannah's voice cracked. She backed against the wall, pale and trembling. Dad knew. He knew, and he... I turned to her quickly, gripping her shoulders. He kept the proof, because if it ever saw light, they'd fall. Hannah, this is what he was protecting us from. This is why he built the barn. She blinked hard, tears spilling. All this time I thought he was just secretive, but he was building a case. Ellis exhaled slowly. A case that'll destroy them, if you're willing to use it. I gathered the photos, sliding them back into the oilskin. My stomach turned, but resolve burned beneath the nausea. The court won't be able to ignore this. They wanted to paint me unstable? Let's see how they look with these in the light. Ellis gave a grim nod. Careful how you play it. Men like them don't go down quiet. Hannah wiped her cheeks, her voice steadier now. Then we don't give them a choice. I tucked the box of evidence into the folder, sealing it with trembling hands. For the first time, the barn no longer felt like a place of shadows. It felt like an armory. James had left me weapons, but the echo of his warning still pressed against my ribs. Don't let them erase the truth. I looked once more at the scorched chamber, the shelves of binders, the weight of decades of sin hidden underground. Then I turned to Ellis and Hannah, voice low but unshaking. It's time to end this. Court wants a fight. They'll get one. And for the first time since James's death, I felt not like a widow, but like a soldier stepping onto the battlefield my husband had prepared for me. The morning of the hearing dawned cold and sharp, frost silvering the fields. I sat at the kitchen table with the folder open, the Polaroids spread like a hand of cursed cards. Every time I looked at them, bile rose in my throat, but the fear only hardened into resolve. Ellis checked his watch. We should leave soon. Get downtown early, let your lawyer prep. I nodded, sliding the photos back into their oilskin wrap. Hannah hovered nearby, her face pale but her eyes steady. She hadn't let the folder out of her sight since we found it. My daughter was no longer the child torn between voices. She was an anchor now, fierce in her own quiet way. The growl of an engine cut through the morning stillness. Ellis stiffened. That's not your lawyer. Gravel crunched. Headlights swept across the porch windows. Then, slam. SUV doors opening, more than one. My stomach plummeted. Ellis grabbed the crowbar he'd kept leaned against the mudroom wall. Stay back, he hissed. The front door rattled hard, once, twice, then burst inward with a crack of splintered wood. 2 men stormed inside. Not Robert, Alan, or David, but hired muscle, broad-shouldered, faces half-shrouded in caps. Get the folder! One barked. I clutched it to my chest. Hannah screamed. Ellis swung the crowbar, catching the first man in the ribs with a sickening thud. The second lunged, grabbing Ellis by the arm. They crashed against the wall, framed pictures shattering around them. Adrenaline burned through me. I bolted for the back door, dragging Hannah with me, but another figure blocked the way. This one I knew. David. Silent, expressionless, eyes cold as stone. Clara, he said softly, like we were meeting for tea instead of a break-in. You're making this harder than it has to be. I tightened my grip on Hannah. You'll have to kill me before you touch this. He tilted his head. That can be arranged. Ellis roared behind us, the sound of bodies crashing together filling the air. Hannah clung to me, trembling but unyielding. I scanned the room, one window, the kitchen knives, the weight of James's folder in my arms. My mind screamed for an exit. Then Ellis shouted, "Go, Clara! Run!" I didn't hesitate. With a surge of desperation, I hurled the folder through the nearest window. Glass shattered, papers and Polaroids scattering into the frosty air outside. David spun toward it instinctively, his mask of calm fracturing as he lunged. I grabbed Hannah's hand and shoved us both through the broken frame, cutting my palms on glass as we tumbled into the cold dirt outside. My knees screamed, but adrenaline drowned the pain. I snatched the folder from the grass, clutching it tight, and dragged Hannah toward the old truck parked by the shed. "Keys!" she cried. I fumbled, heart pounding. Then Ellis's battered pickup keys clattered onto the dirt beside us. I looked up to see him in the doorway, bloodied but standing, one hand clutching his ribs, the other tossing salvation our way. "Go!" he roared. I scrambled into the driver's seat, Hannah climbing in beside me. The engine sputtered once, twice, then caught with a roar. Tires spat gravel as I slammed the truck into gear, tearing down the lane. In the rearview mirror, the SUV headlights blazed, growing smaller but not gone. David stood in the yard, his silhouette framed in the wreckage of my front door, watching us flee. Not chasing, just watching. And somehow, that was worse. Hannah pressed a trembling hand over mine as I gripped the wheel. "Mum, he won't stop." "I know," I said, voice low. "That's why we have to finish this in court. It's the only way." But even as I said it, I knew the Mitchells wouldn't play by courtroom rules. They'd already traded in shadows, graves, and fire. The law was just another tool to them, until it wasn't. The folder sat between us, stained with soot and blood, but intact. James's ledger, the photos, the tapes, they were all still ours. Weapons waiting to be fired. I pushed the truck harder down the empty road, frost snapping under the tires, the dawn breaking blood red on the horizon. War wasn't coming. It was already here. The courthouse loomed ahead, its white columns gleaming under a pale sun. I parked Ellis's truck a block away, my hands still shaking on the wheel. Hannah sat stiff beside me, clutching the folder against her chest as if it were a shield. Ellis had insisted on driving behind us in his own battered car, ribs bound in a rough bandage. "They'll try something before you ever step foot inside that courtroom," he'd warned. "Stay sharp." He was right. We hadn't made it halfway down the courthouse steps before a voice cut through the crowd. "Clara?" I froze. Robert Mitchell stood by the marble railing, immaculate in his dark suit, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Alan flanked him, portfolio in hand. David lingered in the shadows near the columns, silent as always, his gaze locked on Hannah. My daughter's grip on my arm tightened. Robert stepped forward, his tone low and smooth. "You've had a rough few days. Fire, police, that unfortunate break-in. None of that had to happen, and none of it has to continue." I kept my chin high. "Out of my way." He ignored the warning, leaning closer. "Give us the evidence, Clara. Hand over the folder. Walk into that courtroom with nothing, and this ends quietly. You keep your home. Your daughter stays safe." The air around us chilled. "Safe?" I repeated. Alan's voice slid in, calm and venomous. "Accidents happen. Cars spin out on icy roads. Young women disappear on their way home from class. We wouldn't want Hannah to suffer because her mother made the wrong choice." Hannah sucked in a sharp breath, clutching my hand until her nails dug deep into my skin. My rage burned hot, white. "You dare threaten her in front of me?" Robert's smile flickered. "It's not a threat. It's a bargain. Evidence for peace. Think carefully. Is your vengeance worth her life?" Ellis appeared then, limping up the steps, eyes blazing. "You touch her, and I'll bury you myself." David shifted, his gaze sliding from Ellis back to me. That silence of his was worse than words, a promise written in ice. The courthouse doors opened above us, the bailiff calling names into the echoing hall. It was time. I looked at Hannah, her face pale but set, her eyes wet with fear, yet fierce with resolve. She shook her head at me. "Don't give it to them. Dad died for this. We can't let them win." Her words cut through the haze of terror, anchoring me. My daughter, the one they thought they could use as leverage, was stronger than their threats. I turned back to Robert, my voice steady. "You've buried people for less. You've burned barns and broken into my home. But you won't take this. Not today." I held the folder tighter, brushed past him, and walked into the courthouse with Hannah and Ellis at my side. Behind us, Robert's voice carried, sharp as a knife. "Then you've chosen war, Clara, and war has casualties. The marble doors swung shut, cutting him off. But his words lingered, heavy as a curse. Inside, the courtroom waited. Judges, lawyers, clerks. An arena built not for truth, but for who could wield it best. And for the first time, I understood James's warning in full. Once you open the barn, there's no going back. I hadn't just opened it. I had stepped inside. Now the whole world was about to follow me down. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and polish, a place dressed in dignity but bristling with hidden wars. I sat at the petitioner's table with Hannah beside me, the death ledger and photographs sealed in a plain folder between us. Ellis sat 2 rows back, bandaged and pale but unflinching. Across the aisle, the Mitchell brothers gleamed in their suits, each detail sharp, practiced. Robert's smile carried confidence. Alan's portfolio bulged with motions and affidavits, and David sat stone still, eyes fixed on me as though I were already buried. The judge, a weary man with silver hair, rapped his gavel. We are here to hear the matter of Hale Estate, specifically the property known as the Red Barn. Alan rose smoothly, his voice the silk of a man who had made truth bend for decades. Your Honour, my cousins and I come not as aggressors, but as protectors of a legacy. James Hale was not of sound mind when he altered his will, granting full control of the barn to his widow. He suffered from paranoia, delusions, and concealed financial irregularities. We submit sworn statements from colleagues, physicians, and neighbours attesting to his deteriorating state. He placed a stack of documents on the bench, the paper mountain of a man who believed volume equaled truth. The judge nodded gravely. And your request? Custodianship of the barn, its contents, and all related records transferred back to the Mitchell family. My pulse hammered, but I rose, clutching the folder. My lawyer, young, sharp-eyed, hired in a rush, nodded for me to proceed. Your Honour, I began, my voice shaking at first but gaining strength. My husband wasn't paranoid. He was careful. He wasn't delusional. He was documenting the crimes his cousins committed for decades, crimes they are desperate to bury. A ripple of murmurs cut through the gallery. Alan stiffened, but Robert leaned back, his smile daring me to go further. I set the folder on the table, sliding out the death ledger. Its pages flared under the fluorescent lights, James's handwriting stark, undeniable. This is my husband's record. Dates, payments, names, and next to them, burials. The judge leaned forward. Burials? I lifted the photographs, my hands steady now. Yes, graves. My husband didn't just keep numbers, he kept proof. These photos show each brother at sites where bodies were buried, victims of their greed, their schemes. He knew the law wouldn't believe him while he was alive. That's why he left them to me. I handed the evidence to the bailiff, who carried it to the bench. The judge's face paled as he flipped through the Polaroids, then the ledger. Alan surged to his feet. Objection! These are unsubstantiated, forged, planted. But Robert's mask cracked. For the first time, sweat glistened at his temple, his smile faltering. David's fists clenched, his silence vibrating with barely leashed fury. I turned to the gallery, my voice ringing louder than I knew I possessed. They called my husband paranoid. They called me unstable. But the truth is here, in his own hand, in their own faces. They tried to burn it. They tried to steal it. They even threatened my daughter's life to silence me. But James built the barn as a fortress, and he trusted me to finish what he started. Gasps rippled through the room. The judge rapped the gavel for order, his voice grave. These are serious allegations. The court will suspend all Mitchell claims pending criminal investigation. The sheriff is instructed to secure the evidence immediately. Robert stood, his composure fraying. This is a trick. She forged them. My cousin. The judge's gavel cracked down. Enough, Mr. Mitchell. Until these matters are resolved, you and your brothers are barred from approaching the Hale estate or Mrs. Hale herself. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. For the first time, the courtroom turned against them. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed, whispers surged like a tide. I sat slowly, my chest heaving, Hannah's hand gripping mine tight. Tears pricked her eyes, but her voice was steady when she whispered, "We did it?" Across the aisle, Robert's stare bored into me, venomous, his smile now a grimace. Alan's hands shook as he shoved papers back into his case. David's gaze lingered longest, silent, promising this wasn't over. But for the first time since James's death, the balance had shifted. The barn's secrets weren't shadows anymore. They were light, burning, undeniable. And as I sat in that courtroom, my daughter's hand in mine, I realized James hadn't just left me a battlefield. He had left me victory, if I was willing to claim it. When the gavel fell for the final time, the courthouse emptied in a rush of footsteps and whispers. Reporters swarmed the steps outside, shouting questions, cameras flashing like lightning. Ellis flanked us, battered but unyielding, steering Hannah and me through the storm. We didn't answer. Not yet. The truth was out. But truth needed more than one day in court to become justice. By the time we reached the truck, my hands trembled with exhaustion. Hannah climbed in beside me, her face pale but shining with a strange, fierce light. She looked older than she had a week ago. Harder. My daughter had been tempered in fire, and she hadn't cracked. Ellis leaned against the door before I could start the engine. "They won't stop," he said, his voice low. "Robert's too proud. Alan's too slippery. And David, he's a snake that strikes when you least expect it." I know. My fingers tightened on the wheel. But now the sheriff, the press, the courts, everyone knows too. They can't hide in shadows anymore. He gave me a long look, then a rare, tired smile. James would have been proud. The drive home was quiet, the kind of silence that settles only after storms. The fields stretched gold and wide around us, frost sparkling under the afternoon sun. From the road, the red barn still stood, scorched but unbroken, its red boards darkened to almost black. I pulled over at the edge of the drive and stared. For so long, it had been a prison of questions. Now it was something else entirely. Hannah touched my hand. "What do we do with it?" I swallowed hard. "We rebuild, not just the barn, the name, the truth, everything they tried to bury." We walked together through the tall grass, Ellis following with slow, steady steps. The smell of smoke still lingered around the barn's frame, but sunlight pierced through the cracks, dust motes drifting like embers caught in prayer. Inside, the trapdoor yawned open, no longer forbidden, but claimed. We didn't go down. Not yet. Some truths could wait until we were stronger. Instead, I laid James's folder on the scarred desk in the war room, pressing my palm flat against it. "This is yours now, too," I whispered to Hannah. "Your father didn't just leave me a fight. He left you a legacy. Guard it. Carry it. Decide what to do with it when the time comes." She nodded, her eyes wet but unwavering. "I will." The wind shifted through the broken boards, lifting the ashes from the floor, scattering them across the light. For a moment, I thought I heard James's voice again. Not in warning this time, but in quiet relief. We stepped back into the daylight, 3 figures standing against the horizon. A widow, a daughter, an old farmhand. Not heroes, not martyrs, just survivors carrying the truth the Mitchells had tried to bury. The war wasn't finished. I knew Robert would plot, Alan would scheme, David would stalk. Their empire would crumble slowly, but their hunger would not fade quietly. But neither would I. The Red Barn had once been my husband's secret. Now, it was mine, and whatever lay buried beneath it, ledgers, graves, Ghosts. It would no longer be their weapon. It would be my shield. And as the sun dipped low across the fields, setting the barn in a wash of crimson light, I realized something I hadn't felt since the day James died. I wasn't afraid anymore.